Hey, and welcome everybody to another edition of our Homestead from Scratch podcast here. I'm Greg Dowd, joined by John Tejan, Logan Hyde, and tonight we're going to be talking about some black soldier flies and how that's helpful on your homestead. So, what's up, guys? How y'all doing?
It's all good, man. Getting the required rain to keep things growing, and it's past week or so. It's actually felt like winter time, so ready to go.
Nice.
Yep, feeling like winter for sure. Luckily, I got to work inside for the past week, so that was really helpful during this real heavy cold snap we had. Haven't been on YouTube for the past 2 weeks. Had some family health issues. Everything's all right now, and I had a really crazy week with a remodel that I had to do and stuff that got put off. So getting ready to get back into the I guess the groove of things. And yeah, it's been cold though. It's been a lot of unfreezing waters and feeding animals extra to keep them warm.
Yeah, it's taken me a couple of years to finally figure out this frozen water thing, because the way because all of my water lines are above ground right now. I still need to bury them. I mean, it's just one of those things. I got to rent a trencher and do about a couple thousand feet of trenches to bury all that stuff. But since it's on top of the ground, obviously when it gets below freezing, the water lines freeze. But if and it's black pipe and it sits on top of the ground, so as long as the temperature during the next day gets up above freezing, it's all good. And so when I go to their water trough, I've got one of those float valves on it, and I just take the float valve off, I pull the hose out, I drain the hose, so when it's ready to go the next day, it's not all clogged with ice, and I can get water into that trough. So for the cows, they don't drink that much in the wintertime to begin with, not compared to the summer. They still drink plenty. But, it's not like they're drinking in the middle of the night, because the water freezes, and then I get up in the morning, break the ice, wait till it warms up, get the hoses going again. But when it gets like really cold and the temperature stays below freezing, even during the daytime, obviously that's not a good strategy. That's when I move them to the pond and let them just drink out of the pond. But then I got to go down to the pond and take a sledgehammer and break the ice down there. And if you guys remember last year, it got really cold for a really long time. And to go to a pond in Tennessee in the middle of winter and to have about 3 or 4 inches of ice on it is something to see. That's not normal. Not in middle Tennessee. That's a lot of ice, and so that was that's going down there 2 and 3 times a day, breaking that ice and getting all the ice chunks out and giving them a spot to drink in. Now, that's not fun at all. But we're here. It's all good. So, Logan, tell us about these black soldier flies, man.
Yeah, what's going on? I know we used some of them for fishing that one day, and they worked out pretty good at catching us bluegills.
Yeah. Our non-target species. Trying to get all those tilapia and couldn't keep the bluegill off of them. Yeah, so black soldier fly larvae. They're something that I have been playing with for. I'm gonna generously give myself the experience of 3 years, but it's really more like 2. So they're a really awesome addition to the homestead. And I think that just about everyone could benefit from having black soldier fly larvae. It's one of those things, I think no matter what kind of animals you have, they're going to be beneficial 100%. I did, before we got started I did want to make a quick little announcement. We are going to be doing mushroom workshops, like the mushroom logs, here soon. January, February, March are going to be our months for that. As far as I know right now, there are 2 locations, Coleman and Birmingham for the workshops, possibly Huntsville. And there may be more than that, but I'm not sure. It'll be kind of after the holiday season gets over with, probably before we know anything about that. But I'm probably going to be trying to have a little bit of fundraising going on between that time too. I think, Greg, you've been up to, or there we are, Greg, you've been up to North Carolina and Tennessee with the hurricane relief.
No, I haven't got to go up there yet, but
okay. I thought you had, or somebody that you knew was going up there and doing some relief. I've got some really good friends from Nevermore Farms. They're the ones that got us Skoda, our livestock guardian dog, and they're dealing with a lot of people up there on the mountain that are homesteaders, farmers, are having a really hard time getting farm supplies and feed. And so I'm working with them to get some stuff, handled with that. We've talked about how it's hard to get people up there to, do volunteer work and everything. So we're probably going to try to do it more with just, hey, people want to make donations, or we might sell something and give proceeds to that. And so that's going to be coming up. I'm hoping to be able to have them on a live stream, maybe not on our Sunday night. It might be another day. I don't know, but just to talk about that. So if anybody's interested in helping out with that, just getting animal feed, supplies for fencing and stuff like that, you can just contact me, and we're going to try to get that going. But I wanted to announce those 2 things because they're going to be coming up here real soon. And winter up there in North Carolina is really cold. We don't, compare to their winters. So I would really appreciate it if anybody wanted to help, chipping in whatever you can. Like I said, I've got Nevermore Farms going to be working with me on that, and they're going to work either through somebody who does distribution up there, or they'll be the distributors themselves of the goods to people. So, yeah, the feed thing is a big deal, which is another reason that I always advocate doing all this growing your own feed stuff. It's not just because I'm like, hey, we have to, be the lone man on the island and, not be dependent on anybody. It's more about, what are you going to do in emergency situations? And it's black soldier fly larva. I'm going to start out with, I don't know, Greg, can you pull up the picture that I have on X of the life cycle? And we'll kind of just talk about what they are to begin with, because I know some people are going to know what they are. They're really popular, I think, at Homestead right now, or at least in my mind they are, because I, watch a lot of stuff on them. I've done a lot with them, and they're really popular for a reason. So we've got on the screen here, we've got a life cycle of what the black soldier fly do as far as days to adulthood, how long they are an egg and pupa and all that stuff, and how many eggs they lay. But you've probably seen a black soldier fly before. They look kind of scary. They look kind of like a in between, I'd say, a fly, a dirt dauber, and a yellow jacket to me. I mean, they're kind of big. If one were to land on you, you might freak out a little bit. But they don't have any mouth parts. They don't have a stinger. They can do nothing to you. Their whole purpose, like a lot of insects, is to be an adult for a few days, lay eggs, and then die. That's their whole gig, is just to lay eggs and keep the species going. They are decomposers. They are a maggot. A lot of people don't like to use the word maggot when talking about black soldier fly. That's why they say larva, because a lot of people are less turned off by larva than they are maggot, but they are technically a maggot. So as you can see on the screen, you've got an adult lives for about 8 to 9 days. And during those 8 to 9 days, they're going to lay anywhere from 320 to 620 eggs. And what I've heard is it's more of an average of like 500. Those are going to hatch in 4 days. That's going to depend on the temperature. Everything as far as the life cycle goes depends on the temperature. So there's going to be times during the summer you're going to get a lot of life cycles in, you're going to get a lot of generations in, and then, you know, say in spring, fall, you're going to get less when there's cool nights and maybe there's not as much food for them. So what the adults will do is they go into an area where there's either some rotting food, a dead animal, anything that would be a food source for their larvae. And what they're going to do is they're going to lay their eggs above that food source or beside that food source. They don't want to lay the eggs inside of the food source because anything that's inside of that food source already is very capable of eating the eggs. Now, once they hatch, these little guys are some of the most amazing feeders you will find. They eat like crazy. I want to say it's they eat about their body weight a day. And they're going to grow extremely fast eating that much. So we've got larval stages around 10 to 52 days. And it includes 5 instars, which the instars on there are just when you see them basically changing color. They're going to metamorphosis into a different larva, and they're going to look a little different. During that time, if you have anything like, say, you know, a dead animal, if there are any house flies that lay eggs in that, the black soldier fly larvae will outcompete them and a lot of times eat those larvae too. So they're really good because you're not worried about spreading diseases with flies. Your house fly will go and get on a dead carcass and then go get on your food, or it'll go and get on a dog turd and then go get on your food. Black soldier fly will not do that. They lay their eggs outside of the food source, and they don't look for anything that isn't rotting or decomposing. Now, as those pupa grow, or excuse me, the larvae grow, they're going to turn into a pupa. And right around where it says the pupal stage, it says 7 days not feeding, migrates to dry site. That's the 6th instar. That is the time that you want to harvest these little boogers for food. That is when they're going to have the highest fat content. They're going to have the highest protein content. Their protein is about 40% dry weight, and their fat is about 30% dry weight. So you think about chickens and their dietary needs, they're more insectivores than anything. Having something like black soldier fly larvae is a game changer for people wanting to save on layer pellets or chick starter. I mean, it is a complete game changer. And that's when you want to harvest them. So what they're going to do, what you see on YouTube a lot, is there are people that buy these big old bins, and they cost about, I think, somewhere around $300. And they have a little ramp that goes around and goes up at a, you know, like I think a 22-degree angle or something like that. And it has a little hole where they, you know, go out and go to pupate. The reason they do that is because if they stay in with the younger larva will eat them. So they have to migrate out. You can use this to your advantage by having something. You can go buy the $300 bin, but there's a lot easier ways to do that. I've got videos on my channel of just taking barrels, you know, your 55-gallon drums, leaning them on, you know, say a block or landscaping timbers, whatever you've got, and allowing them to just migrate onto that and fall into a bucket out of the barrel. That's $10, you know, versus $300. So really easy to harvest like that. You can even set them up by your chickens or set them up by a fish pond, and they can be fish food. They can self-harvest really easily. I found too that there is some value in harvesting them on larger scales to like freeze them for winter. But in my opinion, it is far more beneficial to do it in season during the spring, summer, and fall, just because there's a lot less work involved than if you try to carry it through winter. Because for one, you got to have them in a climate controlled area. And if you're trying to do it on a scale during summer, you can just get more barrels, in my opinion, and that will allow you to grow more black soldier fly.
So Logan,
yeah, go ahead, John.
I got a question. That was kind of interesting because I'm obviously thinking about doing this. So you completely stop any sort of production or adding food to their container in the wintertime? Do you just let them go dormant? Do they go dormant? Do you have to, how do you restart it in the spring, or how does that work?
So there will be certain larvae that go and get into the ground, and they stay as a pupa over winter. They get into the ground below the frost line, and they stay as a pupa for that time, and then in the spring they hatch out. You don't have to keep a colony going. Now, what Greg mentioned about fish bait, I did have some here that I'm going to be doing indoors. These are just about ready to pupate, and I'm going to do it inside of a net and allow them to do coffee grounds just to have them as fishing bait over the winter. And so I'm doing that, and two, just to experiment and learn about that. There may come a day when I want to do it in a greenhouse or something like that. But for right now, it's just so much easier to do it during the season. And all you've got to do, I've heard people saying, I think Jack Spirko on his show on the Survival Podcast said that he does it with wet, like dog kibble to attract them. But for me, I'm pretty much like, as long as you have something that's dead or stinks or something like that, you can attract them. It's not hard. And especially if you've already had them come into an area, they're going to more than likely come back to that area. But yeah, you can carry it through the winter, but it's really beneficial just to take advantage of the seasons just like you would anything else. I hope that answered the question.
So I don't want to get ahead of your presentation, but
go ahead, get ahead of it.
When starting a colony from scratch, if I wanted to start one, are they already present in my environment and I need to attract them there, or do I have to go out and buy some? Or how does that? I know, like worms, or you're like, well, you got to buy the red wiggler worms if they're going to use them to do blah blah. How's the black soldier fly? I've seen them where you can buy them if you want to, but yeah, what's the story there? Can you just attract them from your environment?
Absolutely. One thing that, like, for me, I think is one of the easy ways to do is take you a 5-gallon bucket and get some really stinky, rotty fruit or some, maybe a little bit of roadkill or something, and put it at like the far corner of your property. Don't leave it out there for a week, or don't set it next to your neighbors. Don't piss them off. But take it out there and let it sit, and more than likely you're going to have them show up. I had them show up a lot. I was saving rabbit manure in big barrels, and it had urine in it. So once it's got the dry cap on it, it doesn't really smell, but somehow those black soldier flies are able to smell it, and they'll go and they'll start laying eggs in that. And once you've had them come to a spot, they're very easy to get. If you try it and you fail, and maybe there aren't a lot in your area, I've never experienced that. You can buy some online, and you're not going to need many. And once you get that colony started, there are, thousands of them. I had just literal, probably hundreds of thousands of larvae.
Wow.
But yeah, so trying to do it through the winter a little bit, just to also for educational purposes and be able to help people out if they want to do it. But they are by far one of the easiest things to do on the homestead, especially considering that you can just about get them to come to any spot and get a colony started and not have to, buy the colony. Which now with the red wigglers, I've also just got those from having rabbits and getting the rabbit manure, and there was red wigglers in that. And I've got old videos on the YouTube channel that I've got, thousands of those too, in like a big IBC tote that I was doing it in. But some of the benefits of raising black soldier fly larvae, I would say, is number one, they are a really good food source. That is just, they are unbelievable as far as an insect protein. But the thing to really focus on is waste management. I know if you process your own animals, there is a lot of crap to get rid of. I do love the whole idea of using the whole animal, but at the same time, I'm also of the philosophy that, well, when a lion makes a kill, they leave stuff for a lot of the scavengers. There's stuff for the hyenas, and then there's stuff for the vultures, And so, in my opinion, we are pretty much, as far as the planet goes, we're the top predator. We're the apex predator. And so we don't necessarily need to eat, every butthole and every ear of every animal. And so, there's some of the organs and, entrails of animals that I just say, hey, look, that's dog food, that's chicken food, that's fish food, or it's black soldier fly larva food. So a lot of those skins, carcasses, leftover organs can be thrown into those bins. Now, the one downside of that is the smell, but I have solved that problem, and I talk about it in some of the videos I've made, and it's coffee grounds. And what I do is I just keep coffee grounds on hand to be able to spread over the carcass or whatever it is I throw into the black soldier fly larva bin, and they'll eat that too. It's a food source. Rather than using wood shavings, which they're not going to eat, I like to throw in the coffee grounds because it, for one, hides the smell, and it's also a food source for them. And it makes a really good, if you've got some on top, you can, if you go and fishing, if you're a fisherman like I am, you can go over there, take a scoop of that off the top that's not in, the nasty animal guts and everything, and you can just scoop off that top layer. And a lot of times that's where a lot of your big ones are. You can throw that into one of your little fishing cups and you go fishing, and you're just digging around in coffee grounds. So that's what I use. And so they're super good for waste management because there's a ton of organic matter that is really hard to just constantly be composting. It's a lot easier to be able to just say, hey, I'm going to go throw it in this bin and throw some coffee grounds on top of it.
So that's a question I have is, so for the black soldier fly to produce how much larva for how much feed or whatever, do you necessarily really track that? Or you just kind of throwing things in there as you got them and just letting them produce however much they can based on what there is to eat, I guess?
Yeah. So I like starting it and supplementing with animal carcasses, like whatever's left over anytime I can, or any kitchen waste that doesn't go to the pigs. And when they're growing, going and getting the coffee grounds from Starbucks. I went and I talked to one of the managers at Starbucks here close to where we live. Well, one of the Starbucks, there's only like 800 million in every state. So I went and talked to one of them, and he was like, man, we'll give you as much as you want. They started saving them for me, and I could just take home, big garbage bags of coffee grounds. Of course, they're only filled up about that much because it's really heavy. It's like dirt. And so I was bringing that home and dumping in there to them, and it was getting to where like I had just so many, just so many in there, and you could just take, buckets full and give them to the chickens and ducks and everything else, feed them to fish, go fishing with them. They say that pigs will even eat them, but my pigs haven't been too crazy about them. I don't know if they've really learned what they are, and maybe that's why, but I haven't had them eat them. But yeah, as far as the feed goes, you can really get into that and look at how much feed you need per day to keep up like a certain level of them or whatever. But I don't put that much effort into it. I kind of just go with what I got and try to feed them as much as I can, because as those larvae that are in there hatch out, and as other flies come in that are attracted to like the coffee grounds or whatever you've got in there, that population is just going to grow. and say the population gets too high, it self-regulates. Some of those larvae get starved out, or some of them get eaten by their, brothers and sisters. And it all evens out. It's very easy to manage as far as population.
Now, when you're saying they're, I guess, competitive or even predatory on regular like house flies or your normal flies that you get on a farm, have you noticed, or is there any, I'm not saying there's research, but is there any anecdotal evidence that you can tell that the local fly population is less because you have them? Or is that just more of a, well, if they're in there, they're going to get eaten, but it's not like they're going to go out and clean up your fly population or anything like. I mean, because I have obviously cows and cow manure, and there's flies in abundance here, and I just wondered. I'm always looking for a natural way to control fly populations when I got cows. So.
Absolutely. Not any evidence that I know of, and I haven't really noticed. I think there's just so many options for flies and for black soldier fly larvae. They've kind of figured out how to coexist. You're going to get a carcass every once in a while that's like, hey, the flies came and got it before anything else could get to it. Right. And, cow patties, they don't typically go and lay in cow patties. I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of black soldier fly larvae in cow patties. And, flies, they love the cow pies. So you're going to get a lot of that. Now, one thing that I would recommend that I've heard that there's supposed to be some scientific research behind it is that Muscovy ducks are extremely good at picking through cow pies. And, they're sir?
Getting the larvae out of there?
Yeah, absolutely. They'll go through and it's kind of gross, but they'll just rub that beak all through there and, just pick them out as they go. I imagine they're probably eating some of the cow pie too along the way. They have to. But yeah, you can use Muscovy ducks, which of course there's the Joel Salatin method of running the chickens behind them. Right. And them scratching it apart and everything. But I've heard that the Muscovies, especially in dairy operations, like, enclosed, like conventional. So I'm assuming they would probably be really good at doing it in the pasture too. They're just a little lazier than most birds. They don't, like, if something's, say a few 100 feet away, they might kind of be like, I'll just hang out here. They don't like to wander as much as chickens do.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering. Is like, are they gonna go out in the pasture and be, efficient at that? But being a duck, I'm not gonna get too far away from the pond, I suppose. That's kind of their comfort level, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, but they're the black soldier fly larvae, as far as knocking down fly populations, I don't know that they really do that. But if there is anything,
it's not gonna make them worse, right? Because
exactly
the food source is being protected by the black soldier flies.
Exactly. Now you may have a fly come in there and lay some eggs, but as soon as those little eggs get in there, the black soldier fly comes through there and they're like, do I want them scrambled? Do I want them over easy? Do I want them hard boiled? And they just eat all them boogers up. That's why the black soldier fly larvae, the black soldier flies lay their eggs away from the food source. They're not like a housefly. A housefly gets on there and lays the eggs all over the dead animal or whatever it is. The black soldier fly larvae, because they are so aggressive, the adults have to lay their eggs above the food source or beside the food source, and then those little larvae migrate into it or, fall from above. That's another thing. A lot of people use little pieces of cardboard above the food source for them to lay eggs on. I found that it's completely unnecessary. If you use just a barrel that's, standing upright and you throw stuff in it, they'll lay around the rim. If you've got it tilted like I do, they'll lay it up on the sides and inside of the barrel and, fall from there. So it's never been necessary. I think some of the people, they feel like they're maybe doing something a little more. And, maybe you get more flies coming in there and laying eggs. I don't know, but I've just never had a need for doing any kind of the cardboard stuff or anything like that. I might now that I'm trying to do it indoors, a little bit here in the shed, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Right. So the containers you grow them in or raise them in, are those undercover somewhere? You don't want them out in the rain, or is that the thing you need to protect them from rain? So the containers obviously don't fill up with water. That would be a negative. So is there a lid to put on them? I mean, because I'm thinking about where I can put mine up next to my shed, but then I'm going, but if rain gets in, it might have to be in the shed. I just didn't know what the best location for obviously what's most convenient for you, so you're not walking your animal carcasses and your waste 100 yards through the weeds to get to the container. You obviously want it fairly close, but if it smells, you don't want it too close, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, cover is really necessary. I've got mine just kind of out in the open, and I have covered them with tarps during rains before. And there's been times where I've forgotten, and it does fill up, and it does cause the larvae to migrate more, which I've got holes drilled in the bottom of it to allow it to drain water.
Uh-huh.
But, if you've got like a really big messy mess in there and you don't have enough coffee grounds and a big rain comes through, that would be a very unpleasant surprise when you got up in the morning from some, torrential rains at night. So, yeah, if you can do something to just, because the way the barrel is sitting, like you've got, I got some tongues here from my fish tank. So we'll, you've got it sitting like this. So rain can only fall like about right here and get into the barrel. So if you can just have something that's some kind of roof structure that covers the opening of that, it's perfectly suitable. You don't have to do a whole shed. I've been working on designs for when I get the system set up for next year on how I'm going to do that. And, doing a few experiments with it, but more than likely what I'm going to have is just a small little lean-to roof structure that will cover the front of the barrels. So that way water's not getting in there. And you can do that pretty low. And, try to keep the barrels at enough of an angle where you can put a 5-gallon bucket under there and allow the larvae to, self-migrate and fall into the bucket.
So if you're doing any kind of aquatics, like I was doing aquaponics and having to buy fish feed for that, but having some kind of black soldier fly larva would probably work pretty good for most fish you raise, I would believe. Particularly, I had some bluegill in there, and one thing I did notice was, some of the younger fish would go for like the standard fish food in the store, but I had like a more mature bluegill in there that didn't really want to eat that kind of stuff. It more wanted to eat like kind of insects and stuff like that. So, so the more, I guess it's the same way as like any kind of animal is like once they're used to a certain type of food, like you can't bring them back to something different because they won't be able to eat it. Change their digestive pattern, basically.
That's kind of an interesting loop there. If you're using it for fish food, and then you use the fish carcasses as food for the black soldier fly, so you kind of got a nice closed loop there, or partially closed, And you've probably fed them fish carcasses then as well, right? And they have no problem with that.
They've eaten, let's see here, as far as carcasses that I put in there, they've took a sheep carcass, and this was a sheep that had got injured, and we weren't able to save her, and she died, and she had some really bad wounds, and because normally if an animal looks like it's going to die and it's not sick, but it's like from an injury or something, I'll normally try to harvest the animal real quick. But made the mistake of not doing that and trying to nurse her back to health when I probably should have just done the deed. And so I had to get rid of that carcass. And I was like, I do not want to dig a hole, which I did have. I've got the tractor. I had it here that I could have done that with. But at the same time, I didn't want to have to dig a hole, barrier, and everything. So I thought, oh, well, I'll go up here and I put her in the 55-gallon drum, put a bunch of coffee grounds on top of it. And she was gone in like a few days because there was so many in there, which made me think of something else. As soon as I get off of this, it's going to move into what they'll consume and what they won't consume. But they've done sheep, ducks, rabbit carcasses, fish, chicken. Let's see here. What else? Tons of food waste. And yeah, the fish, they love to eat that. Now, the thing is they're not going to eat anything that's bone. They're not going to eat any feathers. They're not going to eat any scales. And they're not going to eat any hair. I don't know if I mentioned that one. But yeah, hair, feathers, bones, scales, stuff like that. They're not going to eat it. And so you're going to have that left over. But, I mean, that can be used to just mix into the compost pile and let it break down.
Compost, yeah.
Yeah. And, and I mean, that stuff doesn't, stink to high heavens. It's all the gushy stuff that's inside them that you want to get rid of. And you can throw the whole carcass in there and they'll clean it. It's actually pretty cool. I need to make some videos of when I clean out my bins and just show y'all some of the bones and stuff. Because they pick it clean. There's a certain type of beetle. I can't remember what they use, but they use it in a lot of museums when they get specimens of, frogs, whatever, and they use those larvae to eat everything off of that carcass. Black soldier fly larvae would be an excellent, use, or that'd be excellent used for that, just to clean carcasses, to show skeletons and stuff in museums. I mean, there's a ton of things that you can do with these little guys, and they're just the ultimate, in my opinion, of waste management. Now, I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with like a maggot bucket. You were talking about fish, Greg, like feeding those larvae to fish. A maggot bucket, some people do it for chickens, some people do it for fish, but it's just basically taking a tripod and hanging a 5-gallon bucket, poking some holes in the top, poking some holes in the bottom, and throwing like roadkill or some kind of carcass in there. Flies will come in, lay eggs in the carcass, and then, fall out of the holes. I can't remember exactly what it is, but there is an issue with some kind of thing that the fly produces that can be harmful to animals sometimes. So black soldier fly larva doesn't have that. So you could really focus, say, like, with a 5-gallon bucket, you could do just about the same thing and maybe just fill it with nothing but coffee grounds. Because if you're going to have it around your chicken yard, or you're going to have it, by your little garden pond or whatever, you could easily fix something that would have a self-harvester to where it just drops out throughout the day in your chicken yard, or where it drops into the pond. So it'd be like an automatic feeder almost. And all you need to do is just keep it topped off with coffee grounds. And when it got too full, you took it out. You dump that stuff into the compost and restart the whole cycle. So yeah, you could even do little portable ones like that. And I mean, they will survive on solely coffee grounds. Now, trying to get them started in just coffee grounds, I don't know if you can do that. You kind of need to get the nasty colony started first to then be able to dump larvae from the nasty colony into the, coffee ground buckets or whatever it is that you're going to use.
So
basically what you can do, if you're like, okay, I don't want to put a rotting carcass out, step number one, you could go to somebody like you, just like sourdough starters, said, can you give me a scoop of those larvae out of there, and then put them in a plastic container, and basically there you go, you're ready to go. They'll take off from there. Cool.
Absolutely.
I was thinking, starting to look around for some roadkill and shovel that in the back of my truck bed.
Hey, well, and you think about, I think a lot of people probably don't do composting because on a small scale, it's kind of hard to do. So you've got what, your banana peel, your 6 eggshells, and some bread or whatever it is, and it's sitting in that little tin on the counter or whatever, and it's like, well, I'm going to go out here, and I mean, you could do root stout or whatever and go bury it in the ground and put some straw over it, and the earthworms will eat it. Like, I'm not poo-pooing on composting, but I think that this is just a really awesome way because you can just add that stuff in all the time. It's a lot easier to manage than having to either turn a compost pile, dig holes, or do even like a slow composting. Because if you get like a lot of food waste, you've got to have the carbon to match that. So you got to have the leaves or whatever it is. With the black soldier fly larva, I can throw a whole sheep in a 55-gallon drum, cover it with just enough coffee grounds to where the stink ain't coming out of the barrel. And those black soldier fly larvae will take care of everything. There's no turning. There's no having to go and get 8,000 pounds of leaves to chop it all up and mix it together and get a good mixture or whatever. It's just a really easy way to handle household waste. And I mean, the coffee grounds, I mean, especially if you're a coffee drinker, you could just about keep enough around that anytime you need to throw something nasty in there, you could say, well, I'll just take my 5-gallon coffee bucket and sprinkle it on top and be done with it. So
here's a good question when it comes to coffee grounds, because unfortunately I use like a Keurig, so they're all in those little pods, so there's really no way the coffee grounds. But if I were to say, you know what, I'm tired of this, it's expensive, and just got like a Mr. Coffee, what if you just threw the coffee grounds in the paper filter? Mm-hmm. Will they eat the filter, or I mean do they eat paper, or how would that work?
So I don't think they eat the paper, but I have noticed that
It'll probably break down pretty quick. I would think
it breaks down just fine, because Starbucks had asked me, they were like, is it okay if we throw in the ones that's got the papers with it? I was like, yeah, that's fine. Leave the filter in there. I'll handle it. I dumped them in there with the filters. There ain't no filters in there anymore. So yeah, you don't have to be just here's the thing. I've gotten really sick of YouTube channels, people with podcasts and everything that want to talk about this, no work, whatever, no work, what this, no work, that. If you want to raise your own food, if you want to grow, a garden, raise animals, be more self-sufficient, chop your own firewood, whatever it is, heat your own house with your own energy, you got to stop focusing on like getting away from the work and making your work more efficient, because you're never going to get away from having to do stuff. I mean, you've always got to do something. And so for me, it's all about focusing on what season and how much work you're going to put in and how much ROI you're going to get on that work. Because if you're not going to, I mean, it's kind of like I'm a real big fan of permaculture in general. And I really like Paul Wheaton's stuff, but all of his stuff about like the lazy gardener and the lazy this and the lazy that. And he's over there building 7-foot tall hugelkultur mounds. Like, that is not lazy. That is work. Even if you're doing it with a machine, that is, you're putting in some effort and some diesel or whatever it is, especially the people that are doing it with shovels. I mean, that's, insane. But at the same time, that hugelkultur mound has a huge ROI. It's going to take forever to break down. It's going to be probably 20 years before it's, starting to lose the effort that you've put in. And so I think the right word to use is, make your work efficient and, focus on the ROI and not like, hey, I'm going to make everything passive where I don't have to do anything. And so with the black soldier fly larva, I still do stuff. I've got to take it to the bins. I got to throw it in there. There's times where you got to stay on top of the harvesting, because if you put a 5-gallon bucket there and those those harvests start coming in, it's like you've got to empty the bucket. You can set it up for the chickens to eat it, but I mean, they're going to eat them every time they come out of there. You may not be able to ration the feed as much. They may eat more than they're supposed to, and chickens will eat more than they're supposed to, and they will waste stuff. So if they eat more than what they need in a day to, have the energy to run around and lay an egg and do all that stuff, they just poop it out, which is not a bad thing. I mean, it does go to the soul. It's not a bad thing, but at the same time, it's like if you want things to be efficient, if you want to grow your own food, there's going to be some work involved somewhere. I just try to, focus on the ROI. So, yes, as far as coffee, I know I got onto a rant somehow from the coffee filter. But the coffee filter, yes, I just throw it in there because it's not worth the time of picking them out. And, you still got to walk out there and, add to it daily. Or if you were doing like me, I went to Starbucks every Monday, and I'd pick up at like around 10 o'clock and bring it back. And sometimes if I didn't have anything to cover, and I wasn't going to be doing any processing, I'd throw the whole bag in there and just let them handle it as it came in. But yeah. Anyway, sorry, coming off of my soapbox.
So the arrangement you made with Starbucks to pick up their coffee grounds, like, was it, do you still continue to do that, or is it only for like certain times of the year that you go and you do that with them? Or
yes, I've stopped for right now, but I'm probably going to get back with the manager here soon, since I'm trying to do it indoors a little bit, and try to, give them a call and say, hey, I'm going to come and pick up on this weekend. Can y'all save some for me? Not get as much as I had been, because the majority of them are really and the type of people that work in Starbucks, I'll tell you this, you come in and you start talking about, which me, I'm a hippie at heart. I mean, I am a hippie. And so I'm all about like, the trees, man. And, this is organic, and, the waste, man, the carbon, like I'm all about that. So you go in there and you just tell them straight up what you're doing, and they love it. I mean, they love it. And so they'll give you as many as you want. And you can go, I mean, it doesn't have to be Starbucks either. It can be any coffee shop. You go and tell them and say, hey, look, I'll, and what I'm going to be doing with Starbucks here soon is I'm going to get me a few of those barrels that have the locking lids. Because one of the reasons they don't like to hold on to coffee grounds is because it attracts a lot of insects. Insects love it. And so if they leave it outside or close to the building or even inside the building in some kind of container that bugs can get into, it attracts all kinds of critters. So, I'm going to invest in that so I can get as many coffee grounds as I want. And I can say, hey, look, all y'all got to do is just dump them in this. They leave it out back. The manager even told me that I didn't have to come talk to them, just come and pick it up. I'll get a couple of them with locking lids. So when I go pick up one, I drop off the empty one and throw the full one onto my truck. I'll probably do something like, I won't do the 55 gallons because there's no way in hell I'm going to be able to pick that up. I'm a pretty stout guy, but that's heavy. So I'll probably do something about half that. I think they've got like some 20 gallons that you can just about find anywhere. And if I have to do a few of them, say drop off 3 or 4 of them and pick them up and drop off 3 or 4 more empty ones, do something like that. But yeah, coffee grounds is one of the best ways to feed your black soldier fly larva, which I do have one more experiment that I'm going to be working with. I just started growing a Zola. I've grown water hyacinth for a long time to feed to my ducks, and that has worked out great. The black soldier fly larva will eat a Zola, and they will eat the water hyacinth. So just in case I can't get coffee grounds, or whatever, you can always grow, something like a Zola and feed to them. Or if you've got some other kind of fodder, there's a lot of green material they'll eat too.
The black soldier flies will eat that green material?
Yes. That's actually because I didn't have any coffee grounds. The ones that were in here, They didn't like the water hyacinth as much, but they ate every bit of the Zola that I had in this bin. And for those who are not familiar with a Zola, it's just an aquatic fern. It floats on top of the water, kind of similar to duckweed, you know. And I just recently got that and started growing it to test out, see what animals I have will eat it, and trying to experiment a little bit with the black soldier fly larva on that one.
Okay, sweet. So have you frozen any of these and saved them to feed for later? And how does that work out, if so?
I haven't yet. And I'm kind of freezing them. I think if I do that, it'll probably be I'll freeze them to kill them and then probably dry them when I do that, because I don't know how many bags of maggots my wife will allow into the freezer. Yeah, I mean, I always say she was a city girl when we got married, and I was the biggest country boy, so we kind of compromised and moved into a semi-large town here close, and then slowly I always say I've brainwashed her to be a country girl. So I have to take it one step at a time. If I overstep my bounds, I don't know, I might get killed in the middle of the night. I don't know. I don't want to. The black soldier fly frozen is not worth the risk. But I think that drying them would be a really, really awesome option. Maybe just freeze kill them. I don't think that as far as your return on investment, it would be worth freeze drying them, because I know there are some people that are freeze drying them, and I'm just kind of like, that's like, I don't know. Maybe you could make it work. I'm not saying that it's a bad idea, but I think that the best thing to do would probably be to freeze them and then dry them, because they'll be lighter for one. And if you dry them and you keep them in a dry, relatively dry place, like for example, I saved a couple of these bags here to crush some char in, but say like your plastic feed bags that you get, you could just fill them full of the black soldier fly larva and then store them up in the barn somewhere where they'd be safe. There's not going to be a lot of things that are going to get in there and get them. As soon as I say that, somebody will be like, I put it in my barn and all the rats ate them. But I haven't seen any animals that really go after them if they're stored up somewhere, or even if they're in the bin, alive. But once your chickens figure out what they are, they're hooked. I know when I first gave them to the chickens, they were kind of like, what's this mess? But then after they ate a few, they were like, well, that's pretty good. And then before you knew it, they were all meth addicts over there, just
fiending.
Yeah, I mean, just inhaling them.
Well, yeah, it seems like it would be pretty good for storing some excess during the winter time, because typically from one of my friends that they do homesteading, they talk about for their chickens can almost 100% forage for themselves, free ranging in the summertime, but it's during the winter time where they have to give them some feed. So if you could kind of build up some of these black soldier fly and dehydrate them, or freeze them or whatever, and have them ready for the winter time. Maybe stay out of the feed store for a little bit longer, or stretch out the feed that you have.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to start, because I tell you what, I go broke on chicken feed, and and we feed them the dried worms, the big old bag of that stuff's expensive.
The mealworm,
the mealworms,
a leg for those things, and it's like, but those are, like you said, they're like crack for the chickens. That's how we get them in the coop. When it's time, it's like throw a handful in there, and they just, they're addicted. They just go right in there. But but I mean, the cost is certainly not proportional to what they produce for me. So I'm at a negative cash flow when it comes to chickens. And that's, that is what it is. And I'm okay with that, because, they're part, egg source and part, pets, and, on the farm, you got stuff to do, and and chickens and birds and ducks, they definitely have their pluses of reducing the pest load in the area, and that's a big plus when you're living on a farm.
Are you or your customers, John, big liver fans?
Not that I know of.
Okay,
big
so
liver fan.
Yeah, liver to me. I mean, liver. I know it's a superfood and everything, but just about every liver that I've had, even cooked like I like it, because they say, well, don't overcook it or whatever. It's like I've eaten literal raw meat and organs out of animals. And so, like, don't, tell me that I'm doing it, wrong. If you just do it this way, you'll eat it. Because, I don't know, it's just something about liver. I'm not a huge fan. Not a beef liver, not a chicken liver, any kind of liver. But liver is an awesome feed supplement for animals, especially during the wintertime, and you don't have to feed that much. Because if you think about it, with a regular like chicken ration, they've got all of the protein mixed in there with the other minerals and vitamins and things that the chicken needs to survive. And so that's why it's at 16% protein. If they're getting a larger portion of, say, like a liver, that may be all the protein they need, and then you can feed nothing but scratch grains after that. And it may be stuff that you grow, like, say some sorghum or, sunflower heads. That's the thing. Like, as far as growing grain on small scale, I think it's just 100% not worth it, unless you have a neighbor that has a combine that you can literally just take everything over there and just run it through his combine. Because there's just so much labor that goes into it. Unless, of course, you grow something like a sorghum or, even some corns and sunflower seeds, but you just cut off the heads and store those. Because the chickens themselves, they'll pick at it. They may be, a little spoiled, like, Dad, why isn't this all, prepared for me to just shove down my gullet? But as soon as they realize, hey, he's not giving us anything else, they'll get over there and they'll suck it up and they'll start to do a little bit of work. They'll pick at it. So yeah, having something like that, like, cause I know during the wintertime, a lot of like leftover animal stuff, I like to have some of it saved to be able to supplement some of that and just say, like, hey, here's some liver, especially if you're raising any kind of small birds. Liver is extremely high in all kinds of minerals that birds need. And you can pretty much just about write off then any kind of disease that a young bird is going to get. I know when I was tractoring my ducks and my chickens together, they got a ton of rabbit heart and rabbit liver. And that would be kind of like, an every other day thing. I'd cut it up into little chunks. They get a little bit of that. They get their feed ration and they graze. And that really cut back on the feed. And the black soldier fly larva is an excellent option too, because like you said, John, those mealworms do not come cheap. I mean, a bag like this is probably $7 or more.
Yeah, you get the big bag, it's like $30-$40,
Oh God.
Yeah. It's ridiculously expensive. But so, although it's in the same vein as black soldier fly, your idea on liver, and I'll probably try that. But I'm thinking, if I get, I get a big beef liver, obviously I just can't feed a little every other day. Would you just like chop it up into small pieces and then freeze it and then just take it out little by little and just go here, here's a handful of frozen liver, get to work on it,
Yeah. Or, set it out in the fridge and let it thaw.
Gotcha.
Just because a lot of times, unless it's middle of the summer, they might like it as a treat. Like, hey, it's, 5,000 degrees out here, this ice cold liver hits the spot. You know, I mean, I don't know. That might be something as far as, you know, a treat during the summer, but during the winter, a frozen carcass, you may not, or, you know, a frozen liver, you may not get as much out of that. I know, like, we had a couple of hens hatch out babies. I know we're getting way off topic now, but we had a couple of hens hatch out babies. One of them had like 9, the other had 12. And they hatched them out about middle of November, I think. And there was one day I remember I was processing ducks, and the pigs got some of the carcasses because, I mean, excellent pig food, you know, just as a little protein supplement. They got, you know, the extras of that. But there was one carcass that the ducks on their ribs and stuff have a lot of meat on there. But to me, it's not worth picking it all off. And so I put it in there with the mama and one of the mamas and her babies, and they picked that thing clean. And so used to, back before you could go to the feed store, during the wintertime, you know, animal carcasses, kids going off the road, you know, fish. There's a lot of feed rations that use fish byproducts. And people will say that eggs taste fishy, that they, you know, that are laid by chickens that have any kind of fish protein in them, but I just haven't experienced that. I mean, I think maybe if like all they ate was, you know, just loads of fish every day, that might be an issue, but I haven't had any issues with it because I know that the feed that we give ours, it's got porcine products, which is, you know, just pig, and it's got, you know, fish meal, a little bit of fish meal in there. And animals in nature, they eat each other. So that's another good option if you don't want to have to go through a whole lot of effort on processing the black soldier fly larva.
Cool.
Well, excellent. Coming up on an hour here, you guys want to go around and let people know how they can find you and support you? And Logan, if you want to go ahead and go first.
Yeah, sure. So Hideaway Homestead on YouTube. You can email me at hideawayhomestead@gmail.com. And I am on X. I have 2 awesome followers over there, Greg and John. So you want to follow me on X? I haven't posted much on there. I'm going to try to work on that and get that platform up a little bit. But yeah, check me out there.
Yeah, I'm John Tejan at DJ Cattle Company, and I am on X as Soul Survivor 78, and that's where I is.
All right, and you guys can follow this channel, the Ticket Tribe, and also have another channel that is all focused on my fitness journey, Take the Ride 23. And that's on pretty much all the social media platforms except for Facebook. So we'll catch you guys next time. And thanks, guys. And we'll see you next week. Peace.